I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week we're going to be continuing our predictions of the 2023 Oscars by looking at the Best Cinematography category. We're starting to see a lot of these movies finally get their wide releases. A lot of people are starting to see the movies who didn't see them at festivals, which of course gives us a lot of help in terms of understanding, for myself and for all of you at home, understanding who's going to win, why people have been talking about Cate Blanchett for Tar, or why The Fabelmans is such a beloved movie. We're finally getting to see it and understand it, which of course will help me influence my predictions, but also of course help you understand yours, because that's the ultimate goal of this channel, is to give you my analysis, my thoughts, break down the race, to ultimately help you make your decisions. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, so please do that. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video, and like the video. All those things are greatly appreciated for the success of this channel. But without further ado, let's jump into things with my first pick being The Fabelmans, shot by two-time Oscar winner Janusz Kaminski, who has been nominated for every serious Steven Spielberg movie for the past 30 years. Essentially, when we're talking about the West Side Stories or the Lincolns or the Munichs, when we have a Steven Spielberg movie like The Fabelmans, which is nominated for Best Picture, Janusz Kaminski almost always additionally gets the nomination for Best Cinematography, and oftentimes winning for the most successful Steven Spielberg movies, for example, something like Schindler's List. And while I'm not guaranteeing the nomination, I would actually be personally shocked if he doesn't get in. There's just so many things going for him. First of all, I looked at the past 10 years of nominations within this category, and I tried to figure out how many of them were past nominees. That being said, they got nominated for their second movie or their third movie. You know, they've been nominated multiple times. How many times has that happened? And over the past 10 years, an average of 2.8 out of the 5 nominees, so let's just say 3 out of the 5 nominees, were past nominees or past winners. So they like to nominate people who they've nominated in the past. There is a sort of a respected kind of a group. That's why we see the Roger Deakins or the Janusz Kaminskis get nominated frequently, because they appreciate their work. They're working with high-level filmmakers on great movies, and there is a sort of a bit of a boys' club factor within this category, at least based on historical precedent. So that's one thing going for Janusz, of course, is that it's a strong Steven Spielberg movie, and when strong Steven Spielberg movies in terms of the Oscars get nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, he almost always gets nominated for Best Cinematography, so there's a connection there. Plus, if you've seen the film, it's about, Steven Spielberg growing up and his love of movies, and we see a lot of really interesting and great insert shots and processes of editing and splicing film and taping it to a desk and moving the sort of technical pieces of the camera. Of course, there's some classic sort of Spielberg one-ers and blocking that he's just, so terrific at. And while the movie isn't, I would say, as flashy as something like A West Side Story, it does have this really interesting, unique kind of nostalgic glow, which I think sort of adds to that sort of memory, almost anthology type of storytelling that The Fabelmans is going for. So because Janusz is a well-celebrated cinematographer, because The Fabelmans, I think, will do very well at the Oscars, ultimately, you have to look at your predictions as a holistic view. Right now, I have The Fabelmans winning for Best Picture. But I don't necessarily have The Fabelmans winning else aside from Best Director. So then you have to question yourself, okay, is The Fabelmans really going to win Best Picture and only get Best Director? That's kind of rare. Most of the time, when we're seeing a picture-director combination, they either have an acting win associated with that, or they have some sort of technical win. So if you look at someone like Guillermo del Toro, he'll win for Director, Shape of Water, and then he'll get in for Production Design. So you look at The Fabelmans. If you don't think it's going to win Screenplay, which I do not, if you don't think it's going to win an Acting Award, which I do not, well then where is it going to win? If it really is truly a Best Picture contender, it has to win somewhere else. And right now I think its best chances are in this category, which is why ultimately I have it at the top. Now, is it the most sort of visually stunning, impressive, kind of 1917-esque, wow, incredible cinematography lock with a bullet win? No, it definitely is not. I know a lot of people don't even have it in their top 3. That being said, I do think that if you believe in the Fabelmans as Best Picture contender, at the very least, you have to have some technical nominations, including something like cinematography here for Janusz Kaminski. Then jumping into my next pick, I'm going to go with Babylon, which was shot by Linus Sandgren, who won previously for La La Land, of course a Damien Chazelle movie, and based on the reactions that we've had that past week now, for the most part, it was kind of as expected, at least for me, based on people who've read the script, based on sort of buzz. It is a 3-hour excess kind of a movie, crazy, a lot of movie. Not all of it works, but it's sort of this bold, ambitious statement on Hollywood. Some people love it, some people really hate it. that's enough ultimately for nominations. I mean, year over year, people think, oh, the movie's divisive, it could not get nominated. False. That's actually how the Oscars work, especially when it comes to nominations. Now, when it comes to predicting the winners, that's a sort of totally different thing. But in terms of nominations, we've seen controversial movies like Don't Look Up, like Vice, like even Jojo Rabbit. These movies that some people really love and some people really dislike, they've seen these movies still get nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Screenplay, do very well at the Oscars because ultimately there is enough fans of that movie to get it in. So I think Babylon will be sort of more of a divisive movie, so that maybe hurts its chances for winning Best Picture. That being said, the people who love it will really love it. And based on the trailers and what we've heard so far, the sort of technical mastery and the ambition of it is so incredible with the sort of different colors and costumes and moving camera work. So they're giving Linus Sandgren, the cinematographer, a lot to shoot with, a lot to make look visually interesting. So I do think, based on his past La La Land win, based on the fact that Babylon I still think is a Best Picture nominee, a Best Director nominee, I think that is sort of a technical achievement that we've seen from all of Damien Chazelle's movies. I think he'll get in. Plus, let's not forget Linus Sandgren. He's only been nominated once, in which he won for La La Land, but he almost got nominated for First Man. First Man got a BAFTA cinematography nomination and an American Society of Cinematography's nomination for First Man. So that almost got him for cinematography. And then even last year, Linus Sandgren got a BAFTA for No Time to Die, the James Bond movie. He got a nomination for cinematography for that movie as well at the BAFTAs. So he's been sort of very close to a nomination. He is only a one-time nominee, but he's a winner, and he is also a guy who's almost been there a couple times now. So I do think that that's sort of a hidden fact that we should consider, that he has been well respected and considered, and he's always in contention. But now with Babylon, a stronger movie in terms of the Oscars than No Time to Die or First Man, I think that pushes him over the edge. Then my third nomination, I'm going to go with Top Gun, which was shot by Claudio Miranda, who is a past winner and multiple-time nominee, well-respected cinematographer. However, I wasn't necessarily sure at first blush, is Top Gun really going to get a cinematography nomination? How strong is Top Gun really? Well, of course, like I mentioned earlier, you have to be sort of holistic in understanding of your entire Best Picture nominations. You can't have Top Gun winning Best Sound and then not getting in for cinematography, or it getting all these nominations and then not getting for Best Picture. You have to be somewhat considerate about that. So when I was looking at all my predictions and I was looking at what I think is going to win and what's going to get nominated at this stage, I found it almost inevitable that Top Gun will get nominated for Best Cinematography. Why? Well, first of all, I think it's going to get in for Best Picture. So I do think that because it's not going to get any acting nominations, I don't think it may get screenplay, I'm not sure. So it's going to need a lot of the technical nominations to support and justify that Best Picture prediction, which I do think it will. I think I'll get it for sound, I think I'll get it for editing, cinematography. And then when I was actually looking further at my predictions, I saw a correlation between Best Sound and Best Cinematography. Now, we all know the correlation between Best Sound and Best Editing. There's a strong correlation between the winners in those two categories. However, what's sort of underanalyzed is the connection between Best Sound and Best Cinematography. As a matter of fact, if you look at the past 10 years, the movie that wins for Best Sound 7 out of the 10 times also gets nominated for Best Cinematography. So if you win that category for Best Sound, you almost always have a Best Cinematography nomination. 7 out of the last 10 years that applied. Now it does get a little bit complicated because, of course, the sound category used to be 2 categories, sound mixing and sound editing. So there are years where 1917 only wins one of the sound categories, and of course gets that cinematography nomination and win. But there is, I think, a correlation that seemingly that the sound and the sort of editing and cinematography are all sort of these sort of easily identifiable technical categories that have a connection between the two. That the way things are shot and then edited together and then sound through that sort of visual sequence in any kind of movie are sort of intimately related. So I looked at my predictions and I go, Top Gun I think is easily winning Best Sound because I think it's going to get in for Best Picture because you have those planes and the big roaring loudness of it all. It just makes total sense for me for Top Gun to win Best Sound. So if I didn't have it in here for Best Cinematography, I would be going against historical precedent. Let's not forget, 7 out of the 10 Best Sound winners also got a nomination for Best Cinematography. So there's a strong connection there. Plus, added on to the fact, I think Top Gun's going to be a Best Picture nominee. Claudio Miranda is a past-time winner who's been nominated multiple times, which of course goes back to the fact that this is a kind of a boys club category where they like to nominate people who've been nominated in the past. So that helps that narrative as well. A lot of things going forward. But I do sort of implore you to sort of have a consistency. If you have Top Gun at winning Best Sound, I think you really need to have it in for Best Cinematography as well. Then my fourth pick, I'm going to go with Emancipation, which was shot by Robert Richardson, who was a legendary cinematographer. You know, 3-time winner, multiple-time nominee. He's always in consideration in terms of the Oscars in the cinematography, regardless of even if his movie is good or not. But let's talk about that movie, because that's why it's still number 4 here, while I'm still a little bit nervous about putting it in my predictions as of right now, because this is the first Will Smith movie post the Oscar slap. Will he get nominated for an Oscar after he just did that? Will the movie be shunned entirely? Hard to say. Based on what we know and sort of reaching out to Academy members, we've heard that people will nominate the movie. They probably just won't nominate him. And I do think that sort of makes sense to me. They're not going to punish the technical craft of the movie because it has Will Smith in it. But because he can't attend the ceremony, he could still be nominated technically, but I would be surprised if Will does ultimately get in for Best Actor. That would be, you know, I think there's too many people that will not even consider it for that to occur. That being said, I do think it could get some technical nominations. I don't think it's maybe a Best Picture contender, but I do think it could get in for something like cinematography, because if you look at the trailer, it's got this very unique visual style, essentially black and white, but very kind of washed out. So it's not totally black and white. You see the brown somewhat bleed through, the greens of grass occasionally bleed through. It's a very interesting approach to the film. And if you look at the past 4 years, there has been a black and white movie nominated in 4 years in a row. So when we have surprises like you would even see like a Cold War nomination in cinematography, or a Lighthouse nomination for cinematography. And remember, it was like Lighthouse versus Ford v Ferrari. I said Ford v Ferrari. There was a surprise. It went to Lighthouse. It went to John Blansky for the Lighthouse, even though the Lighthouse wasn't really a well celebrated movie. And Ford v Ferrari was, but for some reason, this group really appreciates black and white cinematography. So in the past 4 years, that there's been at least one movie that has won for that. Even say in 2020, when Mank won in this category, it was surprising to a lot of people when Nomadland was actually supposed to win in that category. So I think this group really appreciates black and white cinematography, so I didn't want to leave out a potential contender from a movie that what we heard so far is that The Emancipation is a very good movie. People will appreciate it. Of course, it has that Will Smith stink to it. That being said, there's too much going forward for me to ignore completely. The black and white feature, the visual stylistic feature of it, the fact that it's Robert Richardson, a 3-time Oscar winner, multiple-time nominee. A lot of things going for it. I think Emancipation will sort of be a last-minute surprise. Whoa, didn't see that coming, in the same way Lighthouse was, in the same way Cold War was. These black and white movies overperform consistently. I don't want to disregard that, so I put Emancipation into my predictions. Then in my final slot, I went with Avatar: The Way of Water. Now this is a super complicated category. I was sort of debating multiple different types of movies, but ultimately I figured, let's sort of go out on a limb and let's take a prediction before Avatar comes out, and let's say it's going to be good. You know, there's 2 options for the movie. Either the movie is great, and betting on James Cameron betting against him was a stupid thing to do. Betting on him was a smart thing to do, because he's done it continually over and over again. Sort of exceed expectations, take all this time to work on a movie, and then it's great. Now, I do have some reservations. Sequels usually don't do well at the Oscars, so will that get nominated? But let's not forget, the first Avatar won in this category. So who's to say that the sequel won't? I mean, it's shot by Russell Carpenter, who didn't work on the first Avatar, but worked and won an Oscar with James Cameron for Titanic, and has worked with him in the past. Here, coming to Avatar 2, it's either a good but not great sequel, and the cinematography is sort of similar to the last movie and therefore not recognized, or it's a visual feast for your eyes. And based on everything we know of the technology and how it's sort of revolutionizing things, and how James Cameron has continually revolutionized cinema and its technical achievements, I'd be shocked if people sit down December 16th and watch the movie worldwide and they would be not blown away by it. It does seem like it's going to be an immersive kind of experience, especially once you get in and are in that world for an hour. I think the sort of visual majesty of it all will be so appreciated that Russell Carpenter will get in for cinematography here. And then also, similar to my Top Gun argument, right now I have Avatar in for Best Picture. So where else is it going to get nominated? It's not going to get in for actor. It's not going to get in for screenplay. It may get in for director, but maybe not. So then where's it going to get in? Production design, yeah. Visual effects, yeah. Score, maybe. It needs to get in somewhere. So cinematography if you really think like I do, it's Best Picture contender, therefore you have to put it in to some categories. Right now I have it in for cinematography. I just think that when people sit down, they'll be too blown away by the visual effects and the world that Cameron has once again brought us back into. I think it'll be a big success of the movie at the box office, $2 billion. And I do think that ultimately it will get in for cinematography, that nomination. Then some possible contenders quickly. Like I said, it was a really tough category to predict, so these contenders are a real strong contender still. My first one is Bardo, shot by Darius Khondji instead of Emmanuel Lubezki, who won 3 times and has won twice for a movie, so a little bit surprising that he's not in the contention this year and didn't shoot this movie. But Darius Khondji is a Past Time nominee, has worked with great directors, Michael Haneke, David Fincher, the Safdie brothers. But the reason why I have it sort of on the outside here is because, first of all, I don't know how Bardo is going to play. I can see it play to certain people within the Academy, but then others I think will maybe see it a little bit as self-indulgent. I think Netflix is really pushing Glass Onion more so than Bardo. So it should get some recognition. I just don't know how much. So I'm a little bit out on Bardo right now. I thought it was going to pick up more steam. It really hasn't, so I have to sort of adapt and adjust and keep it out of my predictions for cinematography right now. And then the other thing is Darius Khondji is a well-respected cinematographer, but he's only been nominated once. He got nominated in the 90s for Evita, but, you know, he's worked with David Fincher, he's worked with Michael Haneke. I mean, he's worked on movies like Amour and Midnight in Paris and Uncut Gems, you know, semi-Oscar contenders. Amour was a multiple Oscar nominee. He was always in contention, but for some reason never got in. So that sort of questions me, like, why is this guy who's been working on these great movies, why has he not got nominated? And do we really think a movie like Bardo, who may not get in for Best Picture, will somehow sort of surprise and get in for cinematography? I don't really know. So for me, I'm a little bit sort of dubious right now of Bardo's chances in general, so I kept it out of this category, particularly because it's not Emmanuel Lubezki. It's Darius Khondji, who's only been nominated once. Does he have the same sort of level of respect? Hard to say. We'll see come Oscar season. And then in my other possible contender section, I have Empire of Light, which is shot by the great Roger Deakins. His past 2 nominations, Blade Runner 2049 and 1917, were both wins, but before that, he had never been nominated he had never won despite being nominated a bunch of times. But now I feel like we're sort of in a situation of, listen, Roger Deakins is probably the greatest living cinematographer, but we've given him his flowers. We've nominated a bunch of times. We gave him an Oscar for the last 2 movies he did. Empire of Light is just not a big Oscar contender. I don't think it's going to get in for picture. I don't think Olivia Colman's going to get in. Right now, the movie could get in for cinematography based on Roger Deakins' name alone, but because the movie is so similar to a Bardo or the Fabelmans, this sort of, or Armageddon Time, this filmmaker sort of reflecting on their past of loving movies. I think just by nature of design, people are going to watch the Fabelmans and then they're going to watch the Empire of Light, and they have similar themes, and people are just going to say the Fabelmans is a more well-crafted movie, and that will sort of fill the slot of Empire of Light. So despite the sort of strong name brand of a Roger Deakins, I just don't believe in Empire of Light in terms of it getting a nomination. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the Best Cinematography category. This is a really tough one to do. There's a lot of contenders that could get in. We'll have to watch the ASC. We'll have to watch Critics' Choice, things like that. But that will be a lot of fun as we go along and adjust to our rankings. But I took some big swings in this one, so I'd appreciate if you can comment below. Let me know if you agree with me or if I'm crazy. I'd love to hear that kind of stuff. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.